Genesis, chapters 38 through 40. And it came to pass at that time that Judas went down from his brethren, and came as far to a certain man of Adullam, whose name was Eras. And Judas saw there the daughter of a Canaanitish woman, whose name was Saba. And he took her, and went into her. And she conceived, and bore a son, and called his name And she conceived, and bore a son again, and called his name Amnon. And she bore again a son, and called his name Selom. And she was in Casbi when she bore them. And Judas took a wife for his firstborn, whose name was Thamar. And the firstborn of Judas, was wicked before the Lord, and God killed him. And Judas said to Amnon, Go into thy brother's wife, and marry her as her brother-in-law, and raise up seed to thy brother. And Amnon, knowing that the seed should not be his, it came to pass, when he went into his brother's wife, that he spilled it upon the ground, so that he should not give seed to his brother's wife. And his doing this appeared evil before God, and he slew him also. And Judas said to Thamar his daughter-in-law, Sit thou a widow in the house of thy father-in-law, until Selom my son be grown. For he said, Lest he also die as his brethren. And Thamar departed, and sat in the house of her father. And the days were fulfilled, and Saba the wife of Judas died. And Judas, being comforted, went to them, and sheared his sheep, himself, and Eras his shepherd, the Adullamite, to Thamnah. And it was told Thamar, his daughter-in-law, saying, Behold, thy father-in-law goeth up to Thamnah, to shear his sheep. And having taken off the garments of her widowhood from her, she put on a veil, and ornamented her face, and sat by the gates of Enon, which is on the way to Thamnah. For she saw that Selom was grown, and he gave her not to him for a wife. And when Judah saw her, he thought her to be a harlot, for she covered her face, and he knew her not. And he went out of his way to her, and said to her, Let me come into thee, for he knew not that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, What wilt thou give me, if thou shouldest come in to me? And he said, I will send thee a kid of the goats from thy flock. And she said, Well, if thou wilt give me an earnest, until thou send it. And he said, What is the earnest that I shall give thee? And she said, Thy ring, and thy bracelet, and the staff in thy hand. And he gave them to her, and went into her, and she conceived by him. And she arose and departed, and took her veil off from her, and put on the garments of her widowhood. And Judas sent the kid of the goats by the hand of his shepherd the Adullamite, to receive the pledge from the woman, and he found her not. And he asked the men of the place, Where is the harlot who was in Enon by the wayside? And they said, There was no harlot here. And he returned to Judas, and said, I have not found her, and the men of the place say, There was no harlot there. And Judas said, Let her have them, but let us not be ridiculed. I sent this kid, but thou hast not found her. And it came to pass after 3 months, that it was told Judas, saying, Thamar, thy daughter-in-law, has grievously played the harlot, and behold, she is with child by whoredom. And Judas said, Bring her out, and let her be burnt. As they were bringing her, she sent to her father-in-law, saying, I am with child by the man whose things these are. And she said, See whose is this ring, and bracelet, and staff? And Judas knew them, and said, Thamar is cleared rather than I, forasmuch as I gave her not to Selom my son, and he knew her not again. And it came to pass, when she was in labor, that she also had twins in her womb. And it came to pass, as she was bringing forth, one thrust forth his hand, and the midwife, having taken hold of it, bound upon his hand a scarlet thread, saying, This one shall come out first. And when he drew back his hand, then immediately came forth his brother. And she said, Why has the barrier been cut through because of thee? And she called his name Phares. And after this came forth his brother, on whose hand was the scarlet thread. And she called his name Zara. And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potipharah, the eunuch of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, who brought him down thither. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house with his lord the Egyptian. And his master knew that the Lord was with him, and the Lord prospers in his hands whatsoever he happens to do. And Joseph found grace in the presence of his Lord, and was well-pleasing to him. And he set him over his house, and all that he had he gave into the hand of Joseph. And it came to pass after that, he was set over his house, and over all that he had, that the Lord blessed the house of the Egyptian for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was on all his possessions in the house and in his field. And he committed all that he had into the hands of Joseph, and he knew not of anything that belonged to him, save the bread which he himself ate. And Joseph was handsome in form, and exceedingly beautiful in countenance. And it came to pass after these things, that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and said, Lie with me. But he would not, but said to his master's wife, If because of me my master knows nothing in this house, and has given into my hand all things that belong to him, and in this house there is nothing above me, nor has anything been kept back from me, but thou, because thou art his wife, how then shall I do this wicked thing, and sin against God? And when she talked with Joseph day by day, and he hearkened not to her to sleep with her, so as to be with her, it came to pass on a certain day, that Joseph went into the house to do his business, and there was no one of the household within. And she got hold of him by his clothes, and said, Lie with me. And having left his clothes in her hands, he fled and went forth. And it came to pass, when she saw that he had left his clothes in her hands, and fled, and gone forth, that she called those that were in the house, and spoke to them, saying, See, he has brought into us a Hebrew servant to mock us. He came in to me, saying, Lie with me. And I cried with a loud voice. And when he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried, having left his clothes with me, he fled, and went forth out. So she leaves the clothes by her, until the master came to his house. And she spoke to him according to these words, saying, The Hebrew servant whom thou broughtest into us came in to me to mock me, and said to me, I will lie with thee. And when he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried, having left his clothes with me, he fled and departed forth. And it came to pass, when his master heard all the words of his wife, that she spoke to him, saying, Thus did thy servant to me, that he was very angry. And his master took Joseph, and cast him into the prison, into the place where the king's prisoners are kept, there in the prison. And the Lord was with Joseph, and poured down mercy upon him, and he gave him favor in the sight of the chief keeper of the prison. And the chief keeper of the prison gave the prison into the hand of Joseph, and all the prisoners, as many as were in the prison, and all things whatsoever they do there, he did them. Because of him, the chief keeper of the prison knew nothing, for all things were in the hand of Joseph, because the Lord was with him. And whatever things he did, the Lord made them to prosper in his hands. And it came to pass after these things, that the chief cupbearer of the king of Egypt, and the chief baker trespassed against their lord the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was wroth with his two eunuchs, with his chief cupbearer, and with his chief baker. And he put them in ward into the prison, into the place whereunto Joseph had been led. And the chief keeper of the prison committed them to Joseph, and he stood by them. And they were some days in the prison. And they both had a dream in one night. And the vision of the dream of the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, who belonged to the king of Egypt, who were in the prison, was this. Joseph went into them in the morning, and saw them, and they had been troubled. And he asked the eunuchs of Pharaoh who were with him in the prison with his master, saying, Why is it that your countenances are sad today? And they said to him, We have seen a dream, and there is no interpreter of it. And Joseph said to them, Is not the interpretation of them through God? Tell them then to me. The chief cupbearer related his dream to Joseph, and said, In my dream a vine was before me. In the vine were 3 stems, and a budding shot forth blossoms. The clusters of grapes were ripe, and the cup of Pharaoh was in my hand. And I took the bunch of grapes, and squeezed it into the cup, and gave the cup to Pharaoh's hand. And Joseph said to him, This is the interpretation of it. The 3 stems are 3 days, yet 3 days, and Pharaoh shall remember thy office, and he shall restore thee to thy place of chief cupbearer, and thou shalt give the cup to Pharaoh into his hand, according to the former high place, as thou wast wont to be cupbearer. But remember me of thyself, when it shall be well with thee, and thou shalt deal mercifully with me, and thou shalt make mention of me to Pharaoh, and thou shalt bring me forth out of this dungeon. For surely I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews, and here I have done nothing, but they have cast me into this pit. And the chief baker saw that he interpreted aright, and he said to Joseph, I also saw a dream, and methought I took up on my head 3 baskets of mealy food. In the upper basket there was the work of the baker, of every kind which Pharaoh eats, and the fowls of the air ate them out of the basket that was on my head. And Joseph answered and said to him, This is the interpretation of it. The 3 baskets are 3 days, yet 3 days, and Pharaoh shall take away thy head from off thee, and shall hang thee on a tree, and the birds of the sky shall eat thy flesh from off thee. And it came to pass on the third day that it was Pharaoh's birthday, and he made a banquet for all his servants. And he remembered the office of the cupbearer and the office of the baker in the midst of his servants, and restored the chief cupbearer to his office, and he gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. And he hanged the chief baker, as Joseph interpreted to them. Yet did not the chief cupbearer remember Joseph, but forgot him. Psalm 17, 18 in Hebrew, verses 17 through 31. He will deliver me from my mighty enemies, and from them that hate me, for they are stronger than I. They prevented me in the day of my affliction, but the Lord was my stay against them. And he brought me out into a wide place. He will deliver me, because he has pleasure in me. And the Lord will recompense me according to my righteousness. Even according to the purity of my hands will he recompense me. For I have kept the ways of the Lord, and have not wickedly departed from my God. For all his judgments were before me, and his ordinance departed not from me. And I shall be blameless with him, and shall keep myself from mine iniquity. And the Lord shall recompense me according to my righteousness, and according to the purity of my hands before his eyes. With the holy thou wilt be holy, and with the innocent man thou wilt be innocent, and with the excellent man thou wilt be excellent, and with the perverse thou wilt show forwardness. For thou wilt save the lowly people, and wilt humble the eyes of the proud. For thou, O Lord, wilt light my lamp. My God, thou wilt lighten my darkness. For by thee shall I be delivered from a troop, and by my God will I pass over a wall. As for my God, his way is perfect. The oracles of the Lord are tried in the fire, and he is a protector of all them that hope in him. For who is God but the Lord, and who is a God except our God? Proverbs chapter 3, verses 11 through 15. My son, despise not the chastening of the Lord, nor faint when thou art rebuked of him. For whom the Lord loves, he rebukes, and scourges every son whom he receives. Blessed is the man who has found wisdom, and the mortal who knows prudence. For it is better to traffic for her than for treasures of silver and gold. And she is more valuable than precious stones. No evil thing shall resist her. She is well known to all that approach her, and no precious thing is equal to her in value. The Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew, chapter 10, verses 1 through 23. And when he had called unto him his 12 disciples, he gave them power against unclean spirits to cast them out, and to heal all manner of sickness and all manner of disease. Now the names of the 12 apostles are these: the first Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew his brother, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the publican, James the son of Alphaeus, and Lebbaeus, whose surname was Thaddeus, Simon the Canaanite, and Judas Iscariot, who also betrayed him. The 12 Jesus sent forth, and commanded them, saying, Go not into the way of the Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not. But go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And as ye go, preach, saying, The kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out devils. Freely ye have received, freely give. Provide neither gold, nor silver, nor brass in your purses, nor scrip for your journey, neither 2 coats, neither shoes, nor yet staves, for the workman is worthy of his meat. And into whatsoever city or town ye shall enter, inquire who in it is worthy, and there abide till ye go thence. And when ye come into a house, salute it. And if the house be worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it be not worthy, let your peace return to you. And whosoever shall not receive you, nor hear your words, when ye depart out of that house or city, shake off the dust of your feet. Verily I say unto you, it shall be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in that day of judgment than for that city. Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents, and harmless as doves. But beware of men, for they will deliver you up to the councils, and will scourge you in their synagogues. And ye shall be brought forth before governors and kings for my sake, for a testimony against them and the Gentiles. But when they deliver you up, take no thought how or what ye shall speak. For it shall be given you in that same hour what ye shall speak. For it is not ye that speak, but the Spirit of your Father which speaketh in you. And the brother shall deliver brother up to death, and the father the child. And the children shall rise up against their parents, and cause them to be put to death. And ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake, but he that endures till the end shall be saved. But when they persecute you in this city, flee ye to another. For verily I say unto you, ye shall not have gone over the cities of Israel till the Son of Man be come.